going to prefer to sit while I give this talk. Can everybody hear me okay if I do that? I need to stand up and broadcast.
Ronnie, can you speak a bit louder?
That's what I was just asking. Are you able to hear me up in the back? I am not normally a lecturer. This is not something I normally do. Your professors or teachers are much, much better at this than I am. I am nervous and I have a high anxiety level. So we will try and get through this together. We always have to give an introduction when we give a talk. This is a little bit about who I am. I started working with computers very young. I was fortunate to have that opportunity in 1969. In high school, I studied both math and computer math. There was a total of 7 years at graduation between the two subject matters. Chemistry and typing or keyboarding is not a common skill that people study, especially today in high school. It's something I encourage people to get good on the keyboard, still today. I attended the Oregon Institute of Technology in a rather unique curriculum that is actually a combination of computer sciences and electrical engineering. To get that degree today, I would have to actually get 2 degrees. I would have to get a science degree in computer sciences and an engineering degree in electrical engineering. It was a rather unique program. I entered the industry in Silicon Valley in 1982 and spent 10 years working in defense electronics related businesses. Roll Mil-Spec Computers, Silconics, Rugged Digital Systems, McDonnell Douglas, Lockheed Martin Marietta, et cetera, et cetera. After leaving industry in 1993, I became involved in the open source movement, predominantly with a project called FreeBSD. I'm one of the 3 co-founders of the project. That's still going strong today. Some 30 years later, we just last month, I believe, celebrated the 30th day of it, or the 30th year of us starting that work. The NetBSD project is of similar age, and the OpenBSD project is a project that spawned out of the NetBSD. Currently, I work on an open source project called Free Range Routing. All of these projects are global in scope. We have people working on each of them from everywhere on the planet. These are not geocentric type projects. I became involved in the IETF standards body in 2019. The Internet Engineering Task Force has been in existence since 1980, 1970 something. And this is the standards body that documents how the internet is supposed to work and how you should write protocols for the internet. My main area of research there is in what's called congestion control. It's just like for the roadways, we have to control the traffic on the internet to make sure we don't get traffic jams. I want to try and make this a little bit interactive today. So who are you? My position on who you guys are you're the students that will be tomorrow's engineers, technologists, information scientists, teachers, and you're the people that will build our future. Who do you think you are? Anyone? A researcher?
Speak louder.
A researcher. Okay. What else?
Speak louder. Speak louder.
A software developer. Okay. All right. What is it that you're here at this university to get? what is your what we call a takeaway? And I think one of the most important things that you will take out of university is learning how to learn. Not simply memorizing facts, not simply memorizing information, but actually being able to take that information, the knowledge, the skills, the behaviors that you learn here, and apply it to make new knowledge and skills and behaviors. And that's, you can go look up the formal definition of learning, that's kind of close to it. But don't just memorize the facts. Try to use the facts to build new information with it. Don't be afraid to experiment. Believe it or not, the protocol definitions for the internet are mostly experiments. We don't know what's going to work or is not going to work at global scale. We just really don't know. It's too hard to predict. It's too varied. So many of the standards initially come out as experiments. Many of the changes to operating systems, the FreeBSD, NetBSD, OpenBSD projects, are initially somebody's experiment. They simply tried something to see how it would work and what the outcomes would be. And then the other thing is learning to communicate. Today, everybody's got one of these. We all send each other little short 50-word or less text messages. For me, that's not effective communication. It can be, if it's a really small, short subject. But we're spending more time in these very short, small subjects and not spending time communicating complicated subjects, large subjects. These skills can be either in writing, and this is a way to write. Email is generally a larger body of composition. Published papers, which I don't know in undergraduate that you will do here. Definitely postgraduate work involves publishing papers and research work. And finally, the takeaway is it's more about what you can do with the knowledge you have, not in so much just having that knowledge. It's what you can do with it, what you can accomplish with the knowledge. And that for me has been very important throughout my life. Any questions? Any comments? This is not a very interactive audience. I'm usually, most of the talking that I do is at conferences where I'm actually speaking with peers that are working in the exact same subject matters that I'm in. I like to we get a lot of feedback going on. So if I present some concept and they're lost about it or have questions about it, they'll interact. So anytime anybody wants to interact during this, just raise your hand. We got an hour, and I probably got less than a half an hour worth of material here to talk about. So we can have some interaction tonight. I'm going to move on.
René, just one question that's not clear to me. When you said that you work in the defense electronics, many people here are not quite familiar with this term. Maybe you could... Okay.
I'm trying to sweep under the rug a large part of my life. It's military electronics. It's working with computers and electronics equipment that was used extensively by the U.S. military. Much of it was doing, are you familiar with the terms computer-aided design or computer-aided engineering tools? Much of it I was doing support work on computer-aided design and computer-aided engineering tools that were being used to design missile guidance systems, flight avionics, command, control, and communication systems used extensively by the military for field operations. I later became involved in the semiconductor industry, doing chips, taking some of these technologies when high-density integrated circuits first came out in the mid-80s. I was involved in several redesigns of existing products into miniaturization. We took rack size, refrigerator size computing systems and shrunk them down to cubic foot boxes, a couple of 100 cubic centimeters. I don't know if that answered the question or not.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that gives an idea. I want to move on. Yes.
How did the FreeBSD project start?
How did it start? There was a prior project called 386 BSD, which was a growth out of the University of California, Berkeley, that brought the Unix operating system that was developed at the University of California to the x86 or the i386 PC desktop. It was one of the first fully free open source operating systems. We were Bill Jolitz, who did the 386 BSD port, published his work on Usenet. And I don't know, probably around the globe, a couple of hundred of us were using it. About 10 of us became frustrated with how fast the progress was moving with the i386 project, and that we felt that it could do more quicker. And so we independently formed our own group to move it forward. It was open source, so it was possible for anybody to take the body of work and enhance it. And so basically 10 of us got together and decided to work together and enhance that open source. That's growing today. I believe there are about 300 people that can actually make changes to the source code. There's probably 500,000 to 1 million people around the globe using it. It's become a much larger project than it was initially. But that's the most I can say about it.
How does Netflix use FreeBSD?
How does Netflix use FreeBSD? Some of the places that FreeBSD has ended up, one of them is Netflix. And that Netflix uses FreeBSD as a data storage system, and that all of the movies at Netflix are stored, I believe they're stored in Amazon. I really need to defer to the Netflix experts on this, but I believe they're stored in one of Amazon's data storage instances. They're transported from Amazon's central storage facility out to what are called distribution caches. I believe there is a Netflix distribution cache on the island of Mauritius.
Correct.
There's
Yes,
approximately 4,000 of them around the world. And is what they do is they collect the data of what movies are being requested in a region, and then from the central location, they push those movies out to the caches. So that the first person in Mauritius that watches a movie on Netflix, it may be a little bit slow, but if somebody else watches that movie locally, it will be fairly quick. And this is what they call a distributed content distribution network. It's complicated information science and simple brute force boxes. The caches are interesting boxes that are local because they're actually, the reliability of those boxes is built on a concept what's called fail in place. And that there are 72 hard drives. There are a lot of hard drives in one of these boxes. If any one of those hard drives fail, it doesn't care. The data is replicated within the box, and it simply ignores, it works around the fact that that hard drive has failed. They don't come out and replace the hard drive. And that they work around what's called, they've let it fail in place. It just sits there failed. The one hard drive, they quit using it. They use the other 71 hard drives to deliver the content. And the box will work that way until they replace it. And due to the evolution, technology moves fairly fast. I think you're all aware of how fast laptops become obsolete, how fast desktops become obsolete. Well, Netflix is in the same business. Their computers become obsolete for them at some period in lifetime. And so they just let the box run until they replace the whole box. And then they repurpose or recycle the box that's brought back. Let's talk about, Mauritius is an island, but you're not.
I just wanted to know, FreeBSD, I heard that it is open source. So
Yes.
it is basically free. So how do you earn a revenue through it?
How do you,
Earn money, revenue.
how does NetBSD
Yeah.
or FreeBSD earn revenue?
Yeah, as it is free.
Yes, there's, the biggest way the project itself gets money is it actually has a U.S. nonprofit corporation, what they call a 501c3. This is a tax-exempt corporation, and companies like Netflix, Juniper, the list is long. I really need a copy of the foundation's website. IX Systems, I believe even Supermicro has donated to it. The WhatsApp. How many people here use WhatsApp? Okay, you're helping fund the FreeBSD project indirectly. WhatsApp has been historically one of the largest donors to the foundation. And how WhatsApp makes money using FreeBSD is how FreeBSD gets money to give away an operating system.
It is basically through sponsors.
Yes, contributions. It's through public goodwill. WhatsApp realized WhatsApp makes good money through their application. And they realized that very early, before WhatsApp was even a thing, the founder of WhatsApp decided he was going to use FreeBSD for certain reasons. I'm not privy to what all of those reasons were. But because of that, and because it was a successful application, that gave back to the project and the foundation and funds it today. The foundation actually pays developers to do work on the project, to improve the project. Netflix has a staff of FreeBSD developers that do the work Netflix specifically needs done for what they're trying to do with it, but they also do a lot of work beyond that. And a lot of the work that's done at Netflix actually comes back to the open source free software that's available to everybody. So it's an ecosystem that opens, it's not unique to the FreeBSD project. The same things go on in Linux, and the same things going on in the free range routing project that I'm currently a member of. We get donations. There's a nonprofit corporation that we get donations from several different large companies, some of the same ones that even fund the FreeBSD project. OpenBSD and NetBSD also have foundations, and they also receive revenue streams in the same way. And these projects are open to anybody. Anybody can become a contributor or become involved in the project in some way. And it's not really that hard to become. How many here use Linux? Or have? Okay. Not very many. Most of you are using Windows for your computer science study? Okay. Microsoft has become involved in the open source community. They now support a Linux for Windows platform that lets you run Linux inside of Windows. They're running GitHub. How many people have heard of GitHub? Okay, a little boring. Okay, so the people doing Microsoft development on Microsoft platforms, are you using GitHub as a collaboration tool with other people, or okay? All right, so let's get back to this concept that though you're on an island, I don't know how many square kilometers it is, it's not huge, you're not really constrained by it. Due to the fact that today, and we all felt it during COVID, the economy of the globe is global. The information is available globally. And especially the information, that's mainly come about because the internet has opened access to things everywhere. The open source community and some of the standard bodies, have mechanisms that anybody can participate in. If you want to become involved in IETF, you can go create a data tracker account and start participating on mailing lists. I believe some of the work is even done in GitHub, so that you can participate in things that will shape the internet in the future. You can participate in projects, FreeBSD, OpenBSD, NetBSD, Linux, free-range routing. The list is almost endless, that have impacts that are global in scope. And Logan, who's one of the reasons that I've been able to be here today, works with a local group called Cyberstorm. I think some of its members are here today. How many Cyberstorm members are here today? About 5 or 6 of them. Okay. They're mostly Mauritians. There are some in continental Africa. They've been participating in the IETF standards body since 2017. I think they participate in some other things. I'm going to run out of material before we run out of time. I'll let Logan talk some about Cyberstorm. I think we covered most of this. Open source groups that are making impact. I did not mention some of the larger things that are actually involved in many projects. The Free Software Foundation, it's one of the oldest open source foundations there is, 1985, I believe. The Open Source Initiative, the Software Freedom Conservancy, Wikimedia Foundation. How many people use Wikipedia? Or is everybody using ChatGPT today? How many people are using ChatGPT? Wow, okay. How many people use Google searching to find new information? Okay. These are the tools that have opened up information to a global scale. When I was young, in 1985, my resources for learning new material was going to the library that only had so many books on certain subjects. And sometimes I would have to request books, what they called back then an interlibrary loan. And that would be requesting a book from another library. Today, I can go on the internet and get that same material instantly. So your access to information, your ability to learn new things is much greater. Now, I played a video clip, not everybody's seen it yet because some of you weren't here yet, but our future has some problems that the globe faces. It's not just any one country, it's not any one location. The UN has created this framework, and they call it the triple planetary crisis. It's pollution, the climate crisis, and biodiversity loss of our forest and plants. These problems are pretty serious. And to solve these problems requires involvement of everyone at a global scale. No one country, no one body, even the UoM, is not going to solve this problem. It takes everyone. And I believe it's a fundamental changing about how we think about our planet, our environment, and the other people that we share this planet with. We've been aware of this problem since the 80s. So my generation is complacent in not addressing it. The generation of my children is complacent in not addressing it. And now it's come to the point where this is unavoidable. If this generation, and if my generation and my children's generation don't all get together and start addressing this problem, we're not going to solve it. We should have already done a lot more. And we did some things. Some nations did some things. In the United States, we did the Environmental Protection Agency and the Department of Environmental Quality, and passed a bunch of laws and regulations, and we cut pollution down. We cleaned up some of the messes that we had made. We cleaned up some of our waterways. I actually live in a city where we took a river that was almost lifeless. It was a major port that had been heavily contaminated by pollution, and we cleaned it up. And it's not pristine nature, but it's got life back in it again. But that wasn't enough, because we didn't keep going. So what I think some of the solutions, some of the things that we can apply to get a future that solves some of these problems, is we got to stop using fossil fuels. Oil, coal, their derivatives, and we need to get to clean electricity. And some electricity forms are cleaner than others. There's a lot of controversy around how clean is solar, how clean is wind, how clean is nuclear. My look on it is we got to do all three of these, and we have to do them as hard as we can and as fast as we can, because we know the fossil fuels are dirty. And even if solar is a little bit dirty, we need it, because it's a movement in the right direction. And we don't know, it's an experiment. We do not know what will be successful in solving our future energy problems.
What do you mean by dirty?
All right, people think solar power is pretty clean, right?
What do you mean by clean or dirty? It is just electricity.
It produces electricity, but the mechanism that we use to produce that electricity, solar panels have to be manufactured. In the process of manufacturing solar panels, we produce pollution byproducts. We not only clean, they also have to be renewable. We use certain precious metals in the production of solar panels, silver in particular. There are some predictions that if we tried to power the whole globe strictly with solar panels, we would run out of silver before we could do that. Just as the electric car market, the EV market extensively uses lithium batteries. There is not enough lithium production on the globe. I don't even know if there's enough raw material to produce an EV car to replace everything we use today. So in a sense, those are non-ecological solutions. But I'm not saying don't try them, because they can make an offset. Did that answer what I mean between clean and dirty?
Yeah.
So I'll get back to solar. The other part of solar is when you build a solar panel, it's good for 25 years. What happens to it in 25 years? We have a minuscule recycle plan for solar panels. It's a very hard product to recycle the raw materials in. The glass that covers it is literally fusion bonded to the metal and the silica that's below it. So it's energy intensive to recycle it, and it's difficult. Wind. You can go find what are called wind turbine garbage dumps. The wind turbines have a certain lifetime. The blades break, the motors give out. And this stuff is ending up, they're attempting to find ways to recycle it. Some they've been able to recycle. The generators themselves are copper intensive. They found ways to recycle that. There's another one. We cannot power the globe on wind because it would take more copper than we have to build the generators in the wind turbines. So, though they are fairly clean technologies, they may not be in goal. They may not be able to solve the problem permanently, but we do need to start moving towards them. I'm not advocating that we can't do wind because it's got an end-game problem. Safe nuclear power. How many people know what 3 Mile Island is? Never heard of it. Okay, that's one of the first nuclear reactor accidents. Happened in 79, either the very end of the 70s or early 80s. I'm sure many people have heard of Chernobyl.
Yeah,
One of the largest contaminating nuclear accidents that's happened. And Fukushima, which is comparable to scale of what happened in Chernobyl. Horrific accidents, but they didn't kill very many people. Chernobyl, and I don't have exact numbers here, and there could be arguments about the number of people that died due to the radiation fallout of it and stuff. We probably kill more people every year from the pollution of our coal and oil and fossil fuel byproducts than were killed by Chernobyl in its entirety.
No, but rapidly on this technology, actually, I was with one of the experts and asking him, we have nuclear submarine.
Yes.
And they can power a whole city of 500,000 people.
Yes.
Only one nuclear submarine.
Yes.
So why don't we use this? Because this is very safe. If we're an accident, we just drown it, and it won't cause any problem. And no, he told me it's more strategic, because if everybody gets used to this kind of technology, the other, how we say, economic function of energy won't work properly. That was his answer.
Okay.
And he's a former general, a French general, not a US general.
Okay. I can speak a little bit about nuclear submarine power. They're about 30 to 80 megawatts. I believe not only submarine, but the nuclear powered ships. The USS Enterprise, I believe, has 5 separate 30 megawatt reactors on it. That's all for redundancy. The modernization of that ship converted it to 2 80 megawatt generators. Those, yes, could power a city of 500,000 people. Those are also actually pretty safe nuclear reactors. Alvin Weinberg, the patent holder on the pressurized water reactor, cautioned us in the 1960s not to build large versions of that same reactor. Basically, today's nuclear power plants, Fukushima, Chernobyl not so much, it's a little bit different design. Definitely 3 Mile Island, are in fact just scaled up versions of what's in a nuclear submarine or a nuclear powered aircraft carrier. They took the 30 megawatt design and made a 1 gigawatt, or an AP1 I think is 300 megawatts, 300 to 500 megawatts. They just made a really big version of it. And Alvin Weinberg cautioned them against doing that because you're trying to contain 300 atmospheres of pressure in a very large container. When it's in a submarine, these containers are small, and containing 300 atmospheres is easy when it's a small container. When you scale it up and make it a really big container, you get events like Fukushima, which were actually hydrogen explosions. Those were not nuclear explosions. They were not they were.
That
when
isn't fusion.
Huh?
Not on fission.
It was not driven by the fission process. It was driven by the fact that when you take uranium and you put it inside of zirconium, and then you let it get too hot, they had water, they lost their cooling capacity. And when the core of the reactor melted, the zirconium interacted with the remaining water and it produced hydrogen gas. There's a very well-known chemical reaction that occurs at high temperature when you have zirconium and water and molten uranium together. Basically, it just produces a whole lot of hydrogen gas. And they were not able to vent that gas. It got trapped in the upper part of the building, and then it found an ignition source. It's just hydrogen's nature. Those designs are based around this pressurized water concept. We now have going on what are called fourth generation or clean, safe nuclear power that try to mitigate this pressure situation. There's something called a molten salt reactor, and I could talk a whole hour about this. Is basically you take the uranium and you melt it into salt. And salts are solids at room temperature, right? And salts typically you have to bring them, I gotta do this in centigrade, I think it's 800 degrees centigrade to get them in a liquid state. And so these reactors are built around the concept of nuclear material in a liquefied salt at atmospheric to pressure or slightly above atmospheric pressure. And you can actually get a fusion reaction occurring in the salts, controllable. And what you're operating is a melted down reactor. It's already melted down, so it's meltdown safe. Your normal operating state is melted. What happens if you take away your ability to pump the fluid? The reaction stops. You also can, because you have to keep the material hot, and it will do that on its own. But it has a negative coefficient of thermal operation, so that if you don't keep it moving and keep things going, the reaction itself will stop. And even the hot material, once you stop it, if you simply drain it to a tank where the material spreads out more than it is in the reactor vessel, the reaction stops, and it's very easy to cool it. If a leak develops, if one of the pipes that's pumping around in it breaks, it leaks out and solidifies. It doesn't produce aerosols, it doesn't run down into our groundwater. It's not so hot that you can't easily contain it. It won't melt through the bottom of a 3-meter concrete floor like a boiling water reactor will. So there are countries working on these designs. China, India,
China just announced about thorium.
Huh?
Thorium, using thorium?
It's using thorium is the predominant material. Generally, you have to start a reactor, you have to use a uranium of some type. I'm gonna have to go, my battery died, and I did not bring an adapter. Does anybody? No, never mind. We'll get through it. Give me a minute to let this other laptop boot. So we need to solve these problems through clean energy sources. We need to stop using the fossil fuels. We need to do something. Electric vehicles, hydrogen vehicles, do both. Toyota says hydrogen's a better solution. Elon Musk and Tesla says EVs are a better solution. I say they both look possible to me. Do them both, but let's get going. There was a question up here.
Don't you think that, with the advent of new AI systems, that all of this is probably going to accelerate over the next coming years? Like, we're talking about solar. I read a bit of research on perovskite, which is a new material that
Yes.
we're developing. Seems very interesting. In the nuclear field, there's the fusion reactors that are starting to be developed as well. Don't you think that AI is going to help really accelerate this, like, in ways we've never seen up to now?
Don't know. Honestly, I mean, it could. I'm not willing to put my eggs in the fusion basket because I've been watching the fusion basket for 40 years, and it's always 10 years away. And so, yes, they've made progress. There's no doubt about that. We can light a match. We can produce plasmas. We're getting closer. But how far away are we from practical energy production with fusion? I don't think they'll make it in time. I don't want to scare people, but there's some pretty hard deadlines that some of you have heard of the Paris Accords. Some of you may have heard of where we are in this crisis globally. They're talking about 2050, pretty serious state of affairs. If we do not, I believe even today, if we meet the carbon reduction that we set out to meet, we will see a 2-degree temperature rise by 2050. And for Mauritius, that could be pretty serious. I believe you have a Minister of Environment and some other things that has presented some material about what the impacts of that would be on this island. Those impacts will not be unique to this island. They're global in scope. Everybody will be affected by it. I've lost my slides, so I have no idea what I'm talking about. How many of you have lectured before a room like this? Is that part of your curriculum where you have to take courses and do presentations?
Yes.
Other than teachers, but they do that, the undergraduate, sometime you take a communications course, or how many of you have actually done that already? How many of you are nervous when you do it? I'm in good company. Okay, let's see, we were talking about clean, green, abundant energy. How many people know about the enabling effect that electricity has to an economy? You're part of Africa. Africa has very large continental areas that electricity is not readily available. It has a profound effect on the prosperity and the livelihood and the growth of those economies. And we need to look at some of that. It also enables the reduction of fossil fuel usage. Though how do you guys generate your electricity now?
Majority fossil fuel. Majority is coal,
Coal.
and fossil fuel.
Coal and fossil fuels.
We do some solar, we do some wind, water.
Oh, so you have hydro? You have some
we have
hydro?
hydro. The first one in Mauritius is like 500 meters from here.
Okay. I'm gonna redefine hydro generation. It is probably the most efficient solar power we have available to us. Because if you think about it, how does hydroelectricity work? The sun beats down on our ocean, evaporates the ocean and makes clouds. The clouds come inland and rain. We use that water falling back to the ocean to produce electricity. It is a completely renewable, solar-driven source of electricity. And it's clean. It doesn't produce much pollution. There is some, dams are made out of concrete. Production of concrete is a polluting process. And concrete, globally, is our most used construction material. And that's, some people, when they're thinking about solving these problems, don't realize how widespread they go. Deforestation, we build stuff out of wood. You have to replant the forest that you cut down to get the wood. Wood, trees, forest is an infinitely renewable resource if managed correctly. And we need to start doing that. You can't, trying to remember, in the 80s, Carl Sagan gave a talk about how fast we're deforesting the planet. And it's 1 acre every second. And that was in the 80s. Okay, and an acre's not a lot of land, but when it's 1 every second, it's a lot of land, very fast. And we're not replanting it. A lot of it, Mauritius has the situation that your guys are stuck with a fixed number of square kilometers. And you have to be careful how you plan what you do with those square miles, square kilometers. The recycling and using clean goods initially. I hate these things, but it's the only way I can get water, is in a plastic bottle. I can't buy it in aluminum cans. It's rare to be able to find it in large glass bottles. Aluminum is another infinitely recyclable material. Aluminum, you don't lose any aluminum when you reprocess an aluminum can to make a newer aluminum can. We need to start trying to persuade the producers to move to more materials like that. Paper.
Actually, in Mauritius, they are starting to produce plastic bottles from sugarcane, and these are biodegradable, and you can buy it and use
I'd
it.
love to hear about it.
Yeah.
They're producing some type of polymer chain out of sugar cane that they can make a bottle of.
Yeah.
It's not plastic.
It's not
Plastic.
plastic, yeah.
Where does plastic come from? How do we get plastic?
Petroleum industry.
Yeah, it's an oil byproduct. This comes out of the process of refining crude oil. And on a global scale, we barely recycle the plastics that we produce. The U.S. has what they call bottle bills, which make these a deposited returnable item. Every time I buy a bottle of water in the U.S., I pay 10 cents or 5 cents for the bottle. And when I take the bottle back, I get my 10 cents back. And that encourages the people not to throw these into the garbage stream, but to send them to our recycling stream, where they can be reprocessed. They can produce other plastics out of it. Generally, you can't take the plastic in these water bottles and make more water bottles out of them.
Actually, we have the tax in Mauritius, but we don't have the rest of the facility. We don't.
They charge a tax on the bottles?
Yeah. There's for this bottle, there's like around 2 rupees 50 for more or less 10 cents.
Okay.
But they don't recycle it.
But there's no way for you to get that money back. So
No.
there's no incentive for you to
Exactly.
keep it separate from your, you need to try and find a way to complete that stream. And my preference is we start drinking water out of aluminum cans, and we do that with aluminum cans because of the infinitely recyclable. Glass is another alternative. And those are pretty much infinitely recyclable materials. But we can start by cleaning this up. You guys have a fixed size garbage dump, and I don't know how full it's getting, but what's the plan in 2028 to take care of the waste disposal? I don't know. I don't know what. I have seen nothing on the global scale, but we need to be thinking about those things on the global scale. What are those solutions? We're getting better, but we could always do better. The cost of producing aluminum from raw bauxite material from mining is 20 times what it costs to recycle an aluminum can, the energy cost. So it's important that we recycle our aluminum. So have they done the tax on the aluminum? I do know that you guys have some aluminum recyclers, but I'm not seeing aluminum going to I don't see a stream through garbage collection or through personal collection to get it back to the aluminum recyclers. There are actually facilities on the island to do that recycling, which is good. Paper. We use a lot of plastic wrapping for our food materials and stuff. I was actually very happy to see that most of the restaurants that I go to here, when I get leftovers, I get it in a paper container. The paper is much more recyclable. In the United States, we still use lots of styrofoam, which is not a recyclable material. Where am I at on time? Oh, we're good. People are leaving. I'll leave you with the thought that you are the very people that shall have to solve these problems. It's not an easy problem to solve. My generation obviously didn't solve it. We were aware of it. We ignored it. I'm sorry. And to solve these problems, you need to engage both locally, with each other, and globally. And I think if we do that, if we get enough people doing that, we will solve these problems in time. But we got to start today. And unfortunately, I can't play. Some of you got to see the video clip, and I can't play it now because this. I would encourage you. Carl Sagan was a brilliant astrophysicist. He saw these problems in 1980 and realized that there's a silver lining to solving this problem. And that is, we may finally cooperate on a global scale. Any questions? I'm done. You've had too many questions.
Well, I think recycling these bottles would be good, but I think reusing is an aspect that we haven't really talked about. If we could just reuse the bottles that have been consumed, we would be in a much better place if we could process it and wash it in a way that it wouldn't consume much clean water.
The metals?
Even plastic.
Well, I don't know if plastic is hard to sterilize. Glass is not. And that's how it used to be, all of this would have been in glass containers in at least the United States. And they literally just wash the bottles. And by using sterilization temperatures over 100 degrees C, as long as you keep your water there, you can filter the water and reuse the water, so it's not even a big water consumer. I don't know, can you wash it with salt water? Because you guys have an almost infinite supply of salt water. Maybe there could be research there, but my solution is to get away from using the plastic in the first place, because it still comes from fossil fuels. It's still a petroleum byproduct. And I'm not gonna say that we're gonna run out of oil, because I don't think we'll ever run out of oil. They'll keep finding more of it, and we're gonna start using less of it. So what is there will last longer, but it's not clean.
Hi. I have two questions for you,
Okay.
especially in terms of networking itself.
Okay.
I would like to ask you with regards to mobility. Now we have network mobility and end-host mobility. Everyone has a mobile phone with them, they are moving around. And now, what are the challenges to the TCP/IP model, especially to the transport layer and the internet layer, in order to provide seamless connectivity? We use application, we don't know what's happening behind. But what are the implications of having seamless connectivity with regards to the transport layer? This is my first question. And my second question would be, could you elaborate a little bit on the appreciation of C programming language in terms of kernel programming? I believe, since you're the founder of the FreeBSD, C language is a very powerful language, but what is the appreciation? Because perhaps most of the audience doesn't appreciate C language as much as you do and we do. So I would like to have your appreciation of this programming language.
Okay, to the first question about, he's asking about the mobile network and the fact that we all have cell phones that have internet connectivity and we're mobile, and what is the influence of that on the future of the TCP and IP protocols for the internet. That's actually a working group question. There are new protocols being worked on. One of them called QUIC, which is a attempt to how do I explain this? They're trying to solve the problem that the internet actually, as a network, knows too much about the information that we're moving across it. And it's called obfuscation. And that if we want to do new things with TCP/IP, the problem is the network itself knows too much about how TCP is supposed to work, and firewalls, routers, quality of services, all know a lot about TCP. And unfortunately, that's ingrained the protocols in the devices themselves, so we can't make changes to them that we would like to make. QUIC, as a protocol, encrypts most of the information, and that prevents the equipment that is being used to transport the traffic across the internet from doing the things that has been done to TCP. And QUIC is one of the answers. There are some fundamental problems that happen in the IP layer to do with mobile network, in that when you're connected to your cell carrier, in general, you get an IP address and you keep that IP address as you move around their network. That can be difficult to deal with as we increase the number of people that are doing that, and we increase the size of the cellular network. I am not an expert in the field of mobile IP. There's actually a whole working group. Am I correct, Logan? It is Mobile IP is the name of the working group.
Correct.
That is experts in the field. The telecommunications manufacturers themselves, the 5G network, has some things to deal better with the high concentration of users that the network is experiencing and will continue. I mean, that's growing. To the second question, which I forgot.
It's about the
Operation.
about the
Oh, the C programming language and operating. Okay. I literally started to learn computers at the assembly language, almost the machine language level. The C programming language is significantly more advanced than that. Today, what is taught are object-oriented languages, functional languages, Python, C++, C#, Rust, maybe Erlang, and those are great languages to do many, many things in. But I do not think we are going to see the re-implementation of an operating system in, say, something like Rust. We may see the user land, and it's been done. We may see the TCP/IP protocol stack itself. I was just recently shown a co-developer at FRR is actually written or is in the process of writing a TCP/IP stack purely in Rust. And I didn't think I would see that. Or excuse me, not a TCP/IP stack, a routing stack, all of the routing protocols that are used. So the C languages, I believe, is important for operating system core functionality. I don't see advanced languages displacing that. We probably, I don't even know what the line count of FreeBSD is today, but you're probably, if you were to try and rewrite that, you're talking hundreds to maybe thousands of man-years of effort to redevelop that code. So there's a trade-off with, yeah, if we could rewrite it all in Rust, it might be safer and we might be able to manage its future better, but at what cost? And how long would it take? I see the university is not teaching C. They have a course in C at least?
yeah.
Yeah. You still get to take C programming, okay.
Not necessarily we are moving a little bit with Python, but there's a flavor of C as well.
I'm gonna remain mute on Python.
Well, at least we need to start from somewhere with programming, but however, with
Yeah,
regards to
and the
operating system, C is quite.
Python is obviously a very good language for teaching beginning programming concepts, okay? I can only speak English, but I am multilingual. And that I speak a dozen different computer programming languages. And I can tell you from the exposure to all the different languages, it's just the names have been changed, okay? It's really, all programming languages are Turing complete. And do you know who Alan Turing is?
Yes.
Okay, they're Turing complete languages. To be an effective programming language, you have to be Turing complete. So whether I program in Fortran or COBOL or C or Pascal or Rust or Golang, I'm expressing a set of instructions to accomplish some task. And you can express that same thing in almost any programming language. Some languages it's easier to do certain things in. C does not directly lend itself to multi-threaded programming. Though it does, through the thread library, you can get it. But the raw language itself doesn't have a concept of threads. Other languages do. So diversity in learning programming languages is important. I've never written a program in Rust or Golang, but I can sit down and read both of them and understand what the program's doing. And that's learning how to learn. It's learning how to apply the knowledge that you have to a new situation and expanding your knowledge. Thank you. He's not even looking now. He had a question.
Can you describe your word IETF?
Can I describe it?
If you can.
It's, my involvement with the IETF was predominantly around congestion control. The best way I can explain what internet congestion control is traffic jams. They occur on the internet too. How do we deal with them? How do we, the difference between a car traffic jam and an internet traffic jam is where the traffic jam is occurring and what caused the traffic jam is very far away from the sources on the internet that are causing that traffic jam. And so we need to communicate the fact that there is a traffic jam going on back to things that are very far away. And it gets rather complicated. We have this thing called explicit congestion notification that attempts to use one bit in the IP header to, you can only communicate from the congestion point forward to the receiver, who then has to send it back to the sender that this congestion has occurred. And we use one bit in the IP layer protocol and one bit in the TCP layer protocol to communicate that. And there's new work going on that there is an attempt to make some high fidelity congestion. It's currently approved as an experiment, I believe, called L4S. Unfortunately, that was not the work I was involved in. I was involved in a competitor to it. So, we shall see. It's an ongoing experiment, and actually I believe Comcast Xfinity begins deploying it sometime this winter, right? This winter?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. It's summer for me in the United States, so I'm thinking it's going to be sometime this summer. Anybody else?
I just had another one. Could you tell me how AI can help us or you in your congestion control or in networking itself? Could you suggest some elaboration of avenues of research with regards to AI in networking?
I am not an AI expert. I don't use ChatGPT. I know what it is. I actually do know how it works. But, so I can't easily answer that question. I am sure there are people in my field that are asking ChatGPT questions. I just don't know. I don't know what its answers are. I don't know if it can even answer the question. It might be interesting to see some of the results of asking it some of these questions. One of the problems we have is the available bits in the protocols to address some of these issues. Quite literally, the latest experiment in congestion control took the very last space in the internet protocol. There are no more bits available to do any other experiments. We're out of it. In the common header of both IPv4 and IPv6, we've run out of space. That's why there was such a fierce battle for this last bit of space to try and solve the congestion control problem. I don't know what AI can do. I'm a little bit afraid of what AI might do. I'm very, very afraid that we're not being told about the bad experiments with AI. Some of them have come out. I think Elon Musk saw a bad experiment. Don't know. I'm speculating. But for some reason, he is strongly promoting the idea that we need to slow down what we're doing and we need to get some regulation in place. We need to get some fundamentals. I'm not a big proponent of regulation, but I think we do need to come to an understanding about what the risks are and what may go wrong. We also need to understand what may go right. It may be able to solve some problems that we can't or haven't been able to. Experiment, but experiment safely is a philosophy there. It's one of the reasons that there was such a strong disagreement about how to proceed with congestion control on the internet. The group I was working with believes the current experiment not to be safe to deploy at internet scale. And
don't we need that to actually know what's right?
Excuse me?
Don't we need that information to know what's right on the internet?
The problem is the internet is so complicated and so large that you cannot have that information in advance. You can try and gather as much of it as you can, but it's frequently you do not have all of the information. You learn, generally internet experiments are deployed incrementally in small phases. Like I told you, I believe it's Comcast Xfinity will be the first deployment of the L4S experiment. And so it will be somewhat contained. If it goes wrong, we will make changes. If it goes horribly wrong, we'll end the experiment. And there have been many IETF experiments, not many. There have been some that have been ended. They didn't work. They either didn't deploy well, or the community didn't adopt them and use them, or they were literally failures.
I think maybe an early example might be RED.
Random early drop.
Yes.
Was a congestion technique that at a router that was experiencing congestion, you would randomly pick a packet and drop it out of the packets that were congested. Well, it turns out that's not such a great idea, because you frequently pick packets that are rather important, that cause significant slowdown. In the startup of a communication on the internet, there's what's called a three-way handshake. And if you pick one of those three packets and discard it with red, the three-way handshake basically fails, and you have to start it over. Not very conductive, so it turned out not to be a good solution. And you mentioned red at the IETF and you get a dirty growl from everybody. That was a bad idea. We have much better techniques today, mainly statistical. Cake, what's the other? Codal. FQ-Codal, which actually attempt to look at what the packets are, and statistically and deterministically pick a packet to discard that's going to minimize damages and actually maximize the response from the end nodes to the congestion situation. I'm actually co-working with two other people on some new work in what are called AQMs it's called Deltic, and it's an attempt to make an even better guess at what packet to get rid of at a busy router. Are we out of time?
5 more minutes.
Oh, I had an hour and a half.
Yes.
Oh, I only thought I had an hour. Wow. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Can you talk a bit about Web 3?
Web 3. Don't know anything about it. You tell me.
I don't know, so I wanted to know.
Okay. Anybody in the room know anything about Web 3? You can even tell me what it is, because I may have heard of it by a different name. Are you talking about HTTP 3?
Kind of. I don't understand.
is it possibly that's, oh, well, should I do it to the people that have already asked the big questions? I don't know what I'm distributing. Coffee mugs?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I guess we have some gifts for those asking questions. So, does anybody have another question? I'm sorry I couldn't answer. This is bribery, intensification with goodness. I asked the question? All right, so who knows what Web3 is? I don't, boy, now you really put me on the spot because I didn't come prepared with a list of questions. Do you want to hear about Cyberstorm, which is the local group that Logan runs? I didn't he does, he's already a member. Yes?
I have a question for your friend. He was asking what will be the impact of quantum computers on society and security? Or will there even be an impact?
There's actually another IETF working group trying to look at exactly what are the security implications.
Have you been interacting with the quantum?
I am not involved in quantum computing in any way.
I can answer that.
But he may be able to, because he's actually going to attend the next IETF hackathon, where there is a working group looking at some of those very issues.
But do you think you will have an impact on security? Well, your own opinion, do you think?
Do I think there's a security concern?
No. Yes.
With quantum computing coming about? Yeah, I think it's going to break some of our cryptography tools. Absolutely. The problem with cryptography is we always get better at it, okay? And we always get better at cracking it. So it's a endless battle of one-upmanship. Are the crackers doing better than the cryptographers? And quantum computing definitely is a new game player in that. So is AI. Because AI, there's two things that obsolete cryptography. Computers get faster over time. Computers are 10,000 times faster today than when I started. Okay? So what would have taken effectively an infinite amount of time, more than my lifetime, to compute in 1980, today can be computed in a fraction of a second. And that's brute force as our computers get faster. The other thing that happens that breaks cryptography is flaws in the design of the cryptography itself get found. I can't remember the name of the tables, but MD5 was considered a pretty secure hashing algorithm. It can now be broken by a couple of some very large tables. There's basically indexes of the MD5 hashes that you can literally look up an MD5 hash and find out what the input was to produce it. So there was a fundamental flaw in the algorithm. Nobody realized that this technique would work to solve the cryptography equation. I do not know the state of art on attacks of factoring prime numbers. Most of our cryptography is based on prime numbers, and if you can find ways to factor very large prime numbers that is effective, which an AI may do, and that may be an AI attack against our cryptography. Quantum computing is a brute force attack because it can compute so many of the possible combinations in parallel. So, good question. All right. Who wants a coffee cup? I want to give one to the gentleman back here that asked the questions about C and mobile networking. Those were really good questions. That was-
In fact, I will forfeit the gift. I will forfeit the gift. Don't worry, because I'm a researcher.
Okay. Did you guys get anything out of this talk? Was this worthwhile? Was this worth an hour of your time? An hour and a half of your time? Show of hands. I see some heads nodding. Okay. Are there specific things that you would like to hear about in a talk from somebody that's, I mean, I'm pretty diversely experienced. I'm just an old fart. Did Vince?
Vint came in Mauritius.
Vince, sir, did he speak at the university?
No, he didn't.
He did not. Did he speak anywhere?
He spoke with an interview with a guy called Avinash Mittu, who was a lecturer here.
Okay, he spoke privately. Vince Cerf is considered to be the grandfather of the internet. I don't know. I've been asked. Somebody's classes, most of their students is here, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't need to go speak at his class. If you can't tell, this is uncomfortable for me. Okay. This is anxiety. Some of you will get to learn to experience that. Public speaking, I mean, as I said, I'm normally with my peers. I know 50 to 75% of the people in the audience. Here I know Logan. I know, I think 5 people. Savish, Nathan, Glenn. I can't even pronounce their names well. I just recently met them. The opportunities in open source is actually what afforded me the trip to come to Mauritius. My involvement in the FRR routing project is what has brought me here, to share my knowledge with a group of 5 other Mauritians. Just to give you an idea what participating in Global Scope can lead to some interesting opportunities. I have had the opportunity to travel to much of the globe, not much of the globe. Europe, Singapore. Due to COVID, I missed my opportunities to go to Japan and Taiwan, which would be as close as I'm probably ever going to get to China. What year are you in university? The degree here is 3 years?
Yes.
So what cross section do I have here? How many are first year students? Oh, wow. Okay, you're doing good. How many are second year students? How many are third year students? So it's mostly first year students. I take it as a few first year professors. Do you call them professors? Teachers, lecturers? Lecturers. In the States, we call them professors. They're usually masters of education or masters in the field. Who's got a good question? I think we're pretty much out of time.
I have a question. I'm sure you're aware of Modular, a programming language spearheaded by Chris Lattner.
By Chris?
By Chris Lattner, the creator of the LLVM compiler toolchain.
LLVM compiler tool.
Yes, but what's the language?
Modular. It's a recent language.
Mojolang?
Modular. I mean, it was developed 2 to 3 years ago.
Yeah, I know nothing about it. I am a dinosaur. Okay. Most of my computing skills come from the early 90s. I still work extensively in C. I have to be able to read and understand other languages, mostly languages that are central to operating system or router code development, which means Python, some Go has become a favored language in certain tool developers' repertoire, as has Rust. But I am very rusty at Rust. I've read a little bit of it. I cannot program it. I'm way out of touch with the current language development. LLVM for me, is just a C compiler. I know it can compile all sorts of things, but it's LLV. Who's familiar with LLVM? Ever even heard of it? If I'm not mistaken, it's a project that came out of Apple to compete with GCC, which is the GNU C compiler. It was a open source alternative to GCC, which is an open source compiler, and it is a compiler toolkit. It's for actually developing new programming languages. It's not just a C compiler. It is literally a toolkit for developing. And that's why he's asking the question about a language that's 3 months old, did you say? Yeah, okay. So there are new languages being developed. Want a mug? I'm giving away for good questions. Pretty soon I'm just going to have to start.
Do you think the US military has the power to bring down another country to a cyber attack?
I can't hear you.
So he's saying,
US military has the power to bring down another country to a cyber attack?
can,
Is it working with
I don't think that would be an appropriate question.
I don't have a crystal ball. I do not know. I do not know what their capabilities are. I mean, you could ask that of any country. And I mean, cyber attacks are a reality today. Just go do some digging around the Russia-Ukraine war. There is in the US, I believe they're global in scope, is the Internet Storm Center, ISC, that talks about viruses. And I think you'll find some, who knows what Stuxnet is. It was a virus launched to try and shut down some equipment in a country.
In Iran.
Yes. I was leaving the names out. Because I don't believe that's the only place that there's been derivatives of it used for some other nefarious activities.
I have another question. I think I may already know the answer, but what are your thoughts on Linus Torvalds thinking about rewriting the Linux kernel in Rust?
Go for it. I mean, it's, as I will put it, it's a good experiment to try, to find out if it can be done. Some people say that, it can't be done. Well, I believe the only real way to find the answer to that question is to try and do it. Don't be afraid to question the path. Tell me I can't do it, and I'm going to do everything I can to try and see that I can't do it. Sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes failure occurs early. Sometimes people spend a lifetime. There are mathematical problems that people have spent their whole life trying to solve, and they've been told that this is not solvable. Have we run out of time? You do not have classes to go to? I need to take a restroom break. So if Logan wants, if you want to talk, I'll be right back. Yeah, that's going to fail.
So, we don't have much time left. So can you guys hear me at the back? No? Yes? Okay, good. So I'm part of a Cyberstorm group. We started with basically 2 people, 2017. We also got bigger. We are 30 people now. We work a lot with guys like Rodney and other people around the globe to build the internet standard so that the internet can work. Aside from that, we do a lot of code writing to validate some of the theory behind that. And I've been very grateful to all the members who are here. And some of them are actually students here. So I'll just name them: Kilan, Kanu, who I met via a friend, Salvesh, but actually met completely at random by just walking on the campus, and then he was arguing how great Linux was, and I thought that was an interesting subject to talk about. And there are other people as well, like Nathan and, for example, Darshan, but who are the new people who are joining us. So there was a question about quantum cryptography. There are two students here, Salvesh and Kilan. So their undergraduate thesis is about experimental cryptography that can actually resist quantum computers. That's what they are working on. And they're not working it only in a corner here. They are actually working with researchers, despite being undergraduate researchers from University in Canada, right?
Yeah.
Waterloo?
Yes. So they are sending their code there to be validated and reviewed. So Salvesh, for example, even before graduating, already has code committed in, how many of you know our OpenSSL? Of course you know one. But he's basically working on a version of OpenSSL that can do post-quantum handshake. Same as Kilan, but in just a different protocol application. And there's another person, I mentioned Darshan, he's a first-year student, and he's already sort of packaging things for NetBSD to be able to use post-quantum algorithm. So these are the small steps that you can work on today. You don't need to ask for permission to do that. Like if you can join us remotely at the next ITF, or you can have a discussion with us. We are on all social media. We are on Instagram, not that much, but I know a lot of you use Instagram. We're not on TikTok, sorry. So we're also on Facebook.
If you want to attend an IETF meeting remotely, they've changed it. Can you still get a fee waiver on remote attendance?
Yes, you can.
How do you do it?
You have to basically show some of the work you've been doing. Right?
Okay. It is, you can attend an IETF meeting remotely for free. You don't, if you go to the website and you see that there's this remote registration fee, it's a significant amount of money. There is a fee waiver program. And I strongly encourage students, if you just even want to see how a crazy standards body operates, it's a good opportunity because you can attend and you can hear the working groups that are trying to deal with the mobile network problem. You can hear the working groups that are trying to deal with congestion control. You can hear the working groups that are trying to deal with cryptography. And just, it's knowledge. And you may apply that knowledge to your future.
Yeah. And it's also fun.
It can be fun. For me, it's mostly work.
So here we have those.
Again?
I think we're slightly out of time here. But
I think there's another lecturer that wants to come in.
Yes, so we have those.
I want to thank you for attending.